And welcome to The Verdict. I'm Mick Cornett along with Kent Myers. We're here every week meeting interesting people and dealing with topical issues. And today we continue our look at some of the candidates who will be on the ballot here in the runoff elections later this month.
Yes, we made a decision in trying to schedule shows that you viewers might very much like to hear the two candidates in the runoff for District 40 State Senate seat, formerly held by Cliff Brannon. And today we're bringing you the first of those two candidates, Dr. Ervin Yen. Next week we will bring you Dr. Steve Kern, who is the second candidate. We want our viewers to hear from both candidates on the side of the Republican ballot and go into the voting booth well informed. We hope that we can influence your pick, not for one or the other, but just give you information that allows you to make up your mind. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, Dr. Ervin Yen is today's guest in The Verdict. We'll be right back.
I've always been a public servant. I've served either tribes, I've served the federal government, or I've served state governments. The law allows me to express my natural desire to advocate. My name is Stephanie Cochran. I am an attorney and I am Chickasaw. Lawyers give their clients, and in my case, tribal governments, a voice. And it's through legal decisions that tribes have been able to accomplish and to regain some much lost footing that they encountered in the late 1800s and the 1900s. When I reflect back on this time in history, I think I'll look at it in terms of opportunity. And I think now we have to turn those opportunities into long-term success for our future generations.
See more stories about the Chickasaw people at profilesofanation.com.
People have been talking about energy independence for a long time. It's always been popular, but today it's possible.
We have an enormous supply of oil and gas in the United States, much more than we thought just a few years ago.
New technology, massive new discoveries, largely made by Oklahoma companies. It literally changes everything.
And Oklahoma is leading the charge. Go watch this video to see why. Energy independence starts with us.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
We're very pleased today to have Dr. Ervin Yen on. Dr. Yen is a physician in Oklahoma City, has been for 30 years. The last 20 or so, he's been specializing, if you will, in cardiac anesthesiology. I know Dr. Yen personally prior to today, although I'll have to confess I don't remember it because he took care of me one time. He is a past chairman of the Oklahoma Society of Anesthesiologists. He has married with 5 children. He was the leading vote getter in the primary election. He's hoping, I suppose, to maintain that position in the runoff. But we wanted to bring him here today so you could hear what plans he has for District 40 should he be elected. Dr. Yen, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you.
On the campaign trail, I'm sure you're having no problems getting into neighborhood meetings and knocking on people's doors. What do you tell them when they say, why are you running?
I say that for various reasons, over the last 8 years or so, I've gotten to know a lot of legislators both here and in Washington, D.C. And I've decided that, maybe I'm wrong, but I've decided the vast majority of them are good people who are trying to do the right thing. But they just can't know everything about everything, and as you guys know, they deal with everything. And so I want to be there to help educate them when it comes to healthcare issues. And as you guys know, every year our state legislature does deal with some pretty significant healthcare issues. And some folks have told me this last session more so than ever.
Right.
And I've been to D.C., say, to chat with Senator Inhofe about some healthcare issue, and he'll say, I know defense, I know the military, I don't know too much about that. You might want to go talk with Dr. Coburn about that. He knows more about it than I do, and I will probably vote the way he does. And I think that's quite reasonable. So I want to be there to help educate the other senators. We actually, as you guys know, have a couple of docs in the State House, but one of those is Doug Cox. He'll be term limited in 2 years, so we'll be losing him.
Let's take a look at a map that shows roughly District 40. It is near northwest Oklahoma City metro area. You want to describe it here on the sides, roughly?
Yes.
Four boundaries?
It's bounded on the north primarily by Britton Road, on the west by MacArthur, on the south by 23rd Street, and on the east side it's western, although further to the south it's Classen Boulevard.
So in that area, you're going to have people who have above average income and below average income, and so a lot of different ways of viewing the world.
Absolutely.
How do you approach income inequity?
Well, I have a 45-year history in this Senate district. It is where I have grown up. Literally, all 4 of my public schools are in the district. I graduated from Putnam City Original. All 3 of my homes over my lifetime in the district, 3 churches over my lifetime in the district, and then Baptist Hospital is where I've practiced primarily for the last 20 years or so. And so I know the district. I know the people in the district. And I've discovered that knocking on their doors, because every evening when I knock on doors, I chat with folks that I know or know one of my brothers or knew my parents. It is fun. It really is fun. So I think I can connect with the constituents in this district.
You know, there's several ways of looking at how you would represent people. There's the philosophical side that you have a philosophy, you stick to it, and that's how you vote. There's other side that brings in practicality. You know, what's realistic, or how do we deal with getting things accomplished? How do you approach opportunities like that?
Well, no one has had more opportunity than I. My parents were immigrants, and I immigrated to this country with them from Taiwan. My parents are actually both from the China mainland. They were born in the Shanghai area, and they happened to move to Formosa, now Taiwan, before the communists took over. Okay? They both came from fairly well-to-do families in China that were not treated well by the communists when the communists took over. So my parents did not feel secure living across the Strait of Formosa from the communists. So when I was 2 years old, my parents made the decision to come to America. And my father came first when I was 2 and came to Oklahoma. Why did he pick Oklahoma? Well, I think it had to do with he was a civil engineer, and there was a need for civil engineers. And he actually ended up getting his graduate degree in engineering from Oklahoma Ag. He says he never went to OSU, it was Oklahoma Ag. But he got his graduate degree and then got his permanent residency status. And so for 2 years in Formosa, my mother took care of me and my 2 siblings, young siblings, and worked. So was that easy? I don't think that was easy. But when I was 4, we all moved here to Oklahoma City, and within a year, we actually moved into Senate District 40. So I'm living the American dream. I did not come from a rich family. My parents were totally middle class. My father ended up working at the State Highway Department as a civil engineer, designing bridges for over 25 years. My mother worked at the Medical Research Foundation here in town for over 25 years as a medical technician. And I think it was maybe because of that, that somewhere between the age of 5 and 10, perhaps meeting some of the doctors there at the Medical Research Foundation, that I decided I wanted to be a doctor. And from then on, my entire education was geared towards that, and that's what I did. And I've been very lucky. I've had a very successful medical practice for the last 30 years. So,
I think one way our viewers can learn more about candidates that come on this show and from whom they must pick is to take a look at the candidate's platform, or what are the issues that the candidate lists on the website.
Sure.
And I've gone to your website and isolated a few issues, and we'll just walk through one of them. Mick and I'll kind of trade off on those things, and let's get your views. The first item that you list on your website is guns. What is your position on guns?
Well, I'm certainly pro Second Amendment, and actually I have a concealed handgun permit, and I think I got it about right when they started handing them out. I've had it for 15, maybe 20 years. But so absolutely, I'm a gun guy now. Do I believe everybody should have automatic weapons? Probably not. Do I believe that everyone should be able to carry a handgun no matter where they go? No, probably not. But I do think that concealed handgun permit has been a good thing, because the people who have concealed handgun permits, I believe, are good folks. They're the good guys.
How about the economy and jobs?
Well, I tell you what, I think we are very lucky to have the businesses that we do in this state. Very lucky. Now, certainly some of our politicians may like to take credit for that, but I sort of feel like it's a lot of just dumb luck. We got oil and gas here. And I don't believe we should do anything at the legislature that would jeopardize that relationship. And I was glad to see, you know, there were some folks were wanting to increase the tax on horizontal drilling, and I was very glad to see that we reached a compromise on that. And I think that's a good example of what we need to consider when we're dealing with legislation that has to do with the business community. So let's keep these businesses here.
There's talk in almost every session of the Oklahoma legislature about taking away some of the tax incentives that are available to the oil and gas businesses. Where would you stand on that?
Well, again, like I said, I want to hesitate to take away those incentives. Certainly, they're doing well. And I think compromises like we did on the tax for horizontal drilling is probably a good idea. So, you know, if you want to take away some of the incentives, maybe so, but let's not take them all away.
And it seems like there's never enough money for things like transportation and education. And if you've got to vote on spending, how would you like to change the proportions that are currently going out to some of those areas?
Well, certainly we have to have our roads, our infrastructure, so we have to spend money on that. Now, this currently we have a budget shortfall, and we've cut back on what we pay healthcare providers, and I think we had to do that. You know, we certainly don't like that, but that's something we had to do. But education is very, very important. Now, does that mean I think we need to spend more money on the education in this state? Well, perhaps not. Perhaps there are other ways that we might be able to spend our money more wisely. Okay, so yeah, infrastructure is important, education is important. You know, keeping business here so that we keep the economy way better than most other states, and our unemployment, as you guys know, is way better than most other states. Let's keep it that way. But one of the things I'd like to do is, as a doctor, I feel like I'm highly educated, and I want to work on education, because if we can get our kids well educated, they can have those jobs. Like if you're in engineering, you can get a job real quickly from these energy companies. Well, if you're a smaller energy company, you can't find any Oklahomans to hire, so you go out of state. Well, let's get our kids educated so they can stay in this state and get those jobs.
Most of the Republicans at the state capitol are hoping to lower the state income tax rate. What's your thoughts on that?
You know, I think that's not a bad idea, and if someone wants to move towards no state income tax, I certainly cannot argue with that. But I don't think, you know, if you have a budget shortfall, that's probably not the time to do it. And the other thing is, you know, I don't know about you guys, but my state income tax, you know, if it goes to zero, you know, that's not real significant compared to my federal income tax. So we need to be careful doing that.
All right, Dr. Yen is our guest. He's running for State Senate on the Republican side, District 40. We'll have more with Dr. Yen when we get back.
When you have something important to communicate, it becomes clear that there's a lot of competition for your audience's attention. So how can your message stand out and actually resonate with your audience? Legal Graphics has the answers. The team at Legal Graphics will work with you to plan, design, and even test your presentation to ensure your message will be heard and remembered. Call Legal Graphics today to schedule an appointment. The readiness is all.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
We're back on the set of the verdict, and we're meeting more with District 40 candidate Dr. Ervin Yen. And you have mentioned previously that you're particularly tied to health care and those types of issues. Obamacare it's one of those issues it seems like everybody has a strong opinion about, and not everybody agrees about it. As a medical doctor, how do you think it's working out?
Well, it's horrible, okay? And I can tell you that in my 4 months of knocking on doors, the vast majority of the folks that I'm talking to are dead set against it, okay? Now, can we get rid of it? Well, I don't know, because if you get rid of it, what happens to those folks who lost their insurance? I don't think they magically get it back. But here's what I know about Obamacare, or the Affordable Care Act. It's not affordable, because here's what it's done for me personally, and I'm not complaining, but I think this is an example of what's happened to a lot of people in the state. My health care insurance premiums went up 9% January 1st of this year. My health insurance is through the State Medical Association. I look at it as a non-profit entity. We're not making some CEO rich, we're not making stockholders rich. So it went up 9%. Now, if someone said, well, okay, remember Obamacare says that insurance companies have to cover you for pre-existing diseases. And most people would say that's probably a good idea. And remember Obamacare says that your children will be covered until they're 26. And somebody else might say, that's probably not a bad idea. Now, if your premiums only went up 9%, maybe that's worth it. Maybe that's worth it. And I say, well, yeah, you're right. Maybe that is worth 9%. But what I haven't told you is my premiums January 1st of 2013 had already gone up 27%. I've had that same insurance company since 1984, and it's never, ever gone up that much. It's more like 3, 4, 5% per year. So that's what it's done for me. And again, I'm not complaining, but my guess is it's done that for a lot of other folks. And the other thing is, I've heard from patients that January of this year went to the pharmacy to get medications that they've been getting there, for most of their adult life, and all of a sudden they have to pay more money. And I think that's because their deductibles are now higher for these quote unquote better plans that were better than their previous inferior plans, according to our president.
Let me ask you in that regard, if elected, you would be a state senator from District 40. What, as a practical matter, can the Oklahoma State Legislature do to perhaps help solve some of the problems you've identified?
Well, of course, Obamacare is at a federal level,
right,
and our state legislature doesn't have a whole lot to do with it, although, of course, the Medicaid expansion, our governor certainly has a lot to do with. And just the other day, someone told me that there are some other avenues available to have the Medicaid expansion happen. So the Medicaid expansion is something I need to look at more closely. I'm kind of I haven't really decided which is better. I can certainly tell you that our hospitals would definitely like the Medicaid expansion. But the other thing that you guys are, I'm sure, aware of, this past legislative session was talk of privatizing the state Medicaid system and going to a managed care organization, which actually you guys probably know was tried about 15, 20 years ago, and it did not work well. Why? Because the Medicaid patients could not find doctors. And so, of course, that's certainly another topic, is access to health care, especially in rural Oklahoma. And I think we do a better job of access here in the urban areas, but in rural Oklahoma, I think it's more difficult, especially when we've had these Medicaid cuts to providers, which again, as I said before, we had to do that because of our budget shortfall, and I don't disagree with that. But it makes it harder for folks in the rural areas to find a hospital to go to and to find doctors to take care of them, unfortunately.
I'm sure on the campaign trail you've been asked about your stance on whether or not you're pro-life, and how do you respond to that?
Well, I'm a Catholic. Absolutely, I'm pro-life. I believe life begins at conception.
And when we talk about funding and funding for this, the Department of Corrections doesn't seem to think it has enough money. Department of Education doesn't seem to think it has enough money. How do you respond to these different agencies who just never seem to have enough money at the end of the day?
Well, I think like a lot of America, we need to learn ways to spend our money better, more frugally. And again, as I said, education's always asking for more money, and perhaps we should just spend our money in better ways. An example is in Finland. The entire country of Finland has 1 million more people than the state of Oklahoma. People, not students. But their public school system does a better job if you test their kids versus Oklahoma students. Does a better job, and Finland, the entire country, has 399 school superintendents. As you guys know, Oklahoma has, I believe it's 535. So perhaps that's a way we could save some money and perhaps spend it by paying teachers more.
What do you, what position would you advocate in the state senate on changes in education? Consolidation, would that be one of them?
Well, if that could save us some money, certainly that's something to look at. Now, I also think that school choice is huge, okay? If a parent has a choice between public school, private school, parochial school, magnet schools, charter schools, virtual schools, or online schools, I think all of those entities are going to have to do a good job to get the parents to have their kids use that. So I think school choice is huge. Now, I'll also say that school vouchers might not be a bad idea. Again, I haven't decided on that for sure, but I think that's certainly something to look at.
What about the legalization of marijuana? As a medical doctor, how do you view that issue?
Well, okay, as a physician, the legalization of medical marijuana, how could I argue against that? I think that's a good idea. Now, however, I will say, I think there are some states in America that have legalized medical marijuana, and I don't believe it's really medical marijuana, okay? And I don't believe legalizing marijuana for everyone is a smart thing to do. I mean, I remember a couple years ago they were talking about legalizing marijuana in Detroit, okay? And that's a city that's just been slammed by the loss of jobs in the auto industry, and you're gonna legalize marijuana? You think that's a good idea? I don't think so. All right.
About 30 seconds left. Go ahead and look in the camera and tell people why they should vote for Ervin Yen.
I'm Ervin Yen, and I'm running to be your state senator, and I'm a medical doctor. I know health care, and we don't have a physician in the state senate, and I want to bring that expertise to the state senate. We've got a couple of docs in the House, but one of those guys, Doug Cox, will be gone in 2 years because of term limits. And I have a 45-year history in the district. I know the district, the people in the district, and I hope you can help send a medical doctor to the state senate next month.
And we will have Dr. Yen's opponent on a future show. And we hope that you'll join Kent and I in the next segment. We'll wrap up this one. Dr. Yen, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
We'll be right back.
The human body, an amazing machine. What we're capable of is astonishing. If we look to what makes us human, we find that life is more than a heartbeat, and hope is more than an idea. That knowledge moves us forward, and our community keeps us together. OU Medicine is at its heart, keeping Oklahoma alive and well.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
You have children coming from a different lifestyle, different mindset. You have to open your arms and really do what you have to do to have that child become a part of your family. And if it's more patience, that's what you do. Kids gotta know they can trust you. And that's what we've tried to do with these kids.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
And for almost 30 years, Oklahoma political, government, and business leaders have turned to the McCarville Report for accurate, reliable, inside information. Visit the McCarville Report online.
We're back on the set of The Verdict, wrapping up a show on State Senate District 40. We had Dr. Yen on the show, and we'll have his opponent on next week, Dr. Steve Kern.
Yes, we're going to try to give you both candidates so that when you go into that voting booth at the runoff election, you'll be at least better informed about Senate District 40, we hope.
Interesting topics on the not just the Republican side, but since that's the issue that we've been debating here, but you've got this urge to cut taxes, and you've got all these state agencies that just never seem to claim to have enough money on the end. And at some point, they got to have a budget every May. It's interesting to see how these candidates deal with that perplexing issue.
Well, I sure feel sorry in a way for the state legislators that have to deal with it year after year after year, because it has to come out balanced.
Yeah, it sure does. And they hear from us regardless. All right, we have some website information to give you. First of all, on today's candidate, Yen for Senate. That's Y-E-N, then the number 4, and then Senate.com, yenforsenate.com. And we have a website. We'd love for you to go on our website and tell us about a guest you'd like to see on an upcoming edition of The Verdict, or about a topic you'd like to see us discuss. That website is theverdict.tv, theverdict.tv. That's going to do it for this week's show. We'll see you next time.